We live in an extraordinary time. Today, after 1,800 years of deprivation of Jerusalem, of the inability to have our own capital, we are experiencing, after 70 years of our independence, a historical moment in time. A moment that's really unbelievable, unfathomable. Think about it. I myself spanned 2 generations. What do I mean? I was able to live in a period when we're sitting here today in the Inbal, where you couldn't come to the Inbal. The Inbal was off limits. I never understood before the war, before 1967, how it was possible for a bird to fly over to the Kotel while I was looking at it through the YMCA. The only way I could see it was with rifles pointed at us. Where we're sitting today was full of barbed wire. So you can imagine that I understand the difference that your generation, that younger generations don't appreciate. They never lived without the Kotel. They never lived without Yerushalayim, Ir HaKodesh, belonging to us. My grandparents would warm just to look at a picture of Jerusalem. So where are we today? So now the younger generation is experiencing something totally new. The recognition of Jerusalem as the capital of Israel, something that it's been for the last 70 years. But finally we're getting recognition. So we're living in a month of Adar, that we have more simcha, that we have more beautiful things happening to us. But what's happening in the United States is unbelievable. What's happened is that the world has been turned upside down. From an Obama administration, which was not very favorable to Israel, we come to the most favorable possible administration, an administration that includes, for me, the model of what a religious Zionist is.
What's a Trump administration understand that Obama not understand?
So we live in a miraculous time. Different people have different opinions. The miracle is Donald Trump. He is a miracle. He is really the story of Esther all over again. We see someone who particularly understands the importance of Israel as the only democracy in the United States, has as an ally here in the entire Middle East. And I'll come to that in a few moments. But more importantly, for me, as I was saying, we live in a time that's unfathomable because as a religious Zionist, I see the models of religious Zionism in an Ivanka Trump, in a Jared Kushner, and for that matter, most of all, the height of religious Zionism is demonstrated by Ambassador David Friedman. He is a true model, the epitome of a religious Zionist. And that is a wonderful thing. So we have, again, Israel's closest ally. I've been to other countries of the Middle East, and when you go to a monarchy, you go to any of the other countries, whether it's Jordan, the UAE, Saudi Arabia, you appreciate what it means to be a democracy. And Israel is the only friend of America that is a pure democracy in every possible way.
You know, they say that maybe if we're gonna move the embassy, it's gonna bring more terrorist attacks. What do you think about those people that thinking like that?
Well, I think that's unfortunate. I think we've demonstrated now, when the announcement was made in the very first place, that there has been no increase in terrorism, that there isn't going to be any terrorism. And the best way to fight terrorism, the only way to fight terrorism, is to be brave and do what Donald Trump is doing, to make it clear what the rules of engagement are. The world has to understand that what's been isn't anymore. The world has been turned upside down in many ways, and the Palestinian issue isn't really an important issue today compared to the terrorism that's coming from Iran.
Last week, the senator that came to visit Israel, they say that they hope the Palestinian gonna sit on the table. But I want to ask you, do you think Israel can do peace with the leader that cut from his budget every day, every hour, and pay for terrorist family? This is the guy that we can do a peace with him?
So we've obviously looked at the terrorist issue. We've passed laws, as you know, to ensure that terrorist money doesn't go to terrorism, whether it was the Taylor Act and others. As the ambassador to the United Nations from Israel put it, right now you've made yourself not part of the solution but part of the problem. So we have to hope that there will be somebody that we can have peace for. And of course, we in Israel and we in America yearn for peace.
By the way, what do you think about the ambassador Nikki Haley?
She's extraordinary. Everything about her is extraordinary. She's part of a team that's miraculous. The team is headed by President Trump. Donald Trump understands this region, understands how to negotiate, is the ultimate person to lead a team, and he has very good people on that team, including Nikki Haley, who's extraordinary.
I guess that you are following closer what's going on with Prime Minister Netanyahu and all the investigation. And some people, most of them coming from the Likud party, and Prime Minister himself, that say that this is part from campaign against the Prime Minister and against his family. What do you think about it? And what do you think about all the investigation?
So Israel is a democracy, and Israel is not just a democracy, but it is the primary example of justice, tzedek, tzedek, tirdov. We believe in a standard higher than Berlusconi. We're not Italy. We're a very extraordinary place, on the one hand. But on the other hand, what you have to understand is that what we're talking about in a situation where everybody in this country, probably 75% of this country, believes that there is no better leader to lead Israel today than Benjamin Netanyahu. Everyone, kuli alma lo pligi, as they would say in my yeshiva world. No one argues and suggests that there's somebody better. So now let's look at what we're talking about. We're talking about something that's inconsequential on the one hand, but again, we are a perfect democracy. So that's the dilemma that we have. But there is another theory that I subscribe to, and that is that at the end of the day, the people who elect prime ministers, who elect leaders, are the election. It's the people that decide that, so that there's a higher standard. Now, it seems that what we're talking about in the scheme of things is so inconsequential. There's some of the issues that have been alleged against Sarah Netanyahu make absolutely no sense. Did she take 2 cookies or did she take 3 cookies? Is that really important when we're talking about the leader of a country? So there are missteps that everyone makes. There are presents that are presented to presidents and to leaders of the country by kings generally. So in the consequence of things, we don't know. So obviously, before this all comes to an end, the speculation that's against Bibi Netanyahu is unfair. First of all, there's lots of work that needs to be done before the press indicts him and finishes this matter. So to me, let's see what happens. It's a function of, on the one hand, making sure that this country lives up to the highest possible standards, but on the other hand, we have to have something consequential to talk about. So when we talk about cookies and things like that, that's just inappropriate to my mind.
You know, Prime Minister Netanyahu said that they cannot beat them in the election, so they're trying to do another thing. And this is the part of the one thing that they're trying to make him to not be a prime minister anymore. Do you believe that this is the...
So we have to see what happens. What we really have to see is how this goes down, what the future brings, and whether or not the prime minister calls for new elections. Right now, if it's as the way he thinks it is, and if I'm right in my analysis, then the electorate should govern and tell us what to do.
The last question, that a lot of people in Israel say that the Jewish people that live outside in Israel, let's say the Jewish people that live in the United States, not have rights to say any opinion about Israel. Do you feel like that? What do you tell the people that thinking like that?
Okay, so there are 2 sides to the story. Israel today is the leader of all Jewish people. It takes responsibility for the entire Jewish community wherever Jews are. It is the homeland of all Jewish people. That's how it's been established, and that's how it's practiced. If there are religious issues, Aguna issues, for instance, Israel now is looking to take the leadership on that. If there's a military issue, if there's anti-Semitism, whatever the issue might be, Israel is in the forefront of taking care of it. It sees itself as a world responsibility. So we need to be serious in the rest of the conversation. Like any family, people can disagree. There's a right to disagree, there's a right to take a position. But when it comes to certain matters, Israel is a democracy, like any other democracy. If you want to vote, you need to come here. You need to live here and then have the right to vote. So there are different kinds of issues, different security issues, different social issues that someone has to take cognizance of. The Jews in the diaspora have more difficulties today than ever before. But that doesn't mean that there shouldn't be a meaningful dialogue. But the diaspora cannot dictate to the state of Israel how to go forward. So although Israel is the land for everybody, it's the homeland of all Jews, no matter where they live. They're Jewish Americans, they're American Jews, depending upon how you put the perspective, where you put the dugma. But it doesn't really matter. The most important part is the hyphen. That hyphen brings us all together. The hyphen between the two words. So one is not more important than the other. They're both important. And I think with that thought, we can move forward. There are going to be disagreements, but those disagreements have to be responsible disagreements, and the people who are objecting to things have to understand, again, that this is a democracy, and if they want to have their way, a particular way, they need to come here, vote here, and elect members of the Knesset here to represent them here.
Yeah, the word make aliyah.
Well, I think either make aliyah, but still you have a right to have a conversation, but where you bring that conversation has to have responsible limits.
Mr. Martin Oliner, thank you for this interview.
My pleasure. Always good to be with you.